Well, this is Friday, but it's not just any Friday. It's La Ela Padrig. So La Ela Padrig, Honna. Have I got that right, Pat? That
I
means
think
Happy
so.
St. Patrick's
Last
Day.
telepathic Tossa.
August 2 hand. Well, I was addressing both our viewers, not just you, Pat. So I used the
Yeah,
plural there. You see, Deve.
yeah.
Okay. Is this? How do you feel about St. Patrick's Day? It's so different from when we were young. St. Patrick's Day, the big thing about it then was you're able to eat the sweets that you've been off for Lent.
Exactly. And the other thing as well, I remember as a kid, like remember we were all sort of scrubbed and hair combed and off to mass and so on, and it was a day everybody stopped. Like there's a lot of places now, it's just another day. In fact, some years back, myself and the missus, we used to go for a wee drive on St. Patrick's Day and go around Donegal. And I remember going down by Gidor and outside the pubs at about 2 o'clock, there were about 300 cars at the smallest pub you could find. It was just a day of celebration and whatever.
Yeah,
But that's the old religious thing seems to have gone a good bit. You know.
yeah. I would say that just dropped out of it. All right. Of course, the country is being transformed in terms of marches. I mean,
Yeah.
every town and village seems to have a march. Whereas when
Yeah.
I was a kid, I don't remember any marching at
Yeah.
all. I don't think. Did you
Well,
as a
I'm
kid
heading
think
to
about
Letterkenny
Letterkenny?
in a while, and there's a big one there in Letterkenny. There's has been for years,
Huh.
and getting in and out of Letterkenny at the best of times is a chore, but getting in when there's a parade on, it's a nightmare. But now
Yeah.
there's like I know there's one in Maville, there's one I think in Remilton, there's one I think about somewhere like Glenty. So I think there's about 10 in Donegal.
Yeah, I'm sure
So
there's several in Derry as well. Do you
absolutely.
approve of that, Pat? Do you think that's a good idea or a bad idea?
Jude, I have this idea that anything that helps, cement communities, and I think it's a good thing. And a lot of people meet each other at things like this, and it does a celebration of our heritage and our culture and all the rest of it, and being Irish. So by and large, I think it's good. Now, I know some people think it's a wee bit sort of, what do you say? I don't know what the word is, but I quite like it.
Hmm.
I think it's a good idea.
I remember when I was in Canada as a young man, the first St. Patrick's Day, my mother had sent shamrocks over
Yeah.
for the special day. So I put on some shamrocks and they looked pretty tired, because they had a long journey. And
Uh,
my mate did the same. And when we went to the church, the guy said, "Oh, that's terrible. Here, get a proper." And he give us both big plastic shamrocks, which to our
yeah.
shame we put on and we took down the real shamrock. Uh, there's a sort of a terrible danger. I always think of Paddy Wackery. I was looking for
Uh,
a sort of an electronic St. Patrick's Day card for people, and most of them have featured leprechauns. And that
yeah.
I think it's my wick. It's
Yeah.
it's
But,
sort of
but
playing up the stereotype.
yeah, but isn't there I think there's a Buffalo or somewhere in New York. They turn the river green or something, and in New York they have green beer, and
Yeah, yeah,
the biggest parade in the world, St. Patrick's Day, is in New York,
yeah.
in Fifth Avenue, where it is. And the Americans have, I know you'd wonder why in a place that's a melting pot for Italians, Jews, Hispanics, Negro people, and all the rest. Why a wee country on the western seaboard of Europe, has a special day. I don't know, I don't quite understand. But the biggest day in America for many, many people is St. Patrick's Day.
That's right. That's right. Well, I guess the vast majority of the Irish people would have come over after the famine or during the famine. And maybe it was that they came in such numbers then that they were a huge community and that
Yeah,
gave them strength, which maintained itself. The Irish are very good at doing well once they get out of Ireland. People who work
absolutely.
their guts out once they're outside with a job, but at home would be fed up because they wouldn't see the opportunities.
Yeah, I did economics for leaving cert, and we had a teacher one time, and his observation was that the people with the get up and go back in the day got up and went. They left Ireland. He says that left us with a very young population and a very old population, which he says explained the very conservative sort of nature of Irish society for so many years. All the people, the ones from about 18 to about 35 had all left. So you were left with the under 18s and over 40s. So that's where all the religion and the sort of came. That was his theory.
Yeah. No, well, there's some truth in it, I think. What do you think of the idea, where I've just noticed it, that there's a lot of people will greet you in Irish, as I have done just now, La Féile Padraig. In Strumpet City, by James Plunkett, he doesn't come out and say the characters who use a couple of words of Irish on St. Patrick's Day are a bunch of phonies, but he comes near to it. Do you think, is it a bit daft and a bit sort of lip service to the language to have these few words, and feel you've done your bit?
No, I think it's actually changing to it. I'd nearly go the other way around. I think a lot of people now see there's an authenticity in saying a few words in Irish. I think in the past there was a few, remember, was it Terry Wogan's one? He said he was working in RT and he worked along with a fella called Bill Murphy. And he says, or Billy Murphy, and he says, and he told the story himself, and he says, nice fella and all the rest of it. But he says he was just an ordinary journeyman presenter or whatever it was. And he says he came back 10 years later and there was Liam O'Murrough and he had a big show. So I think Morgan was making the point, there was a certain amount of an RT in places like that and in various other places. Speaking Irish was seen as a sort of a fast track, back in the day. Like, remember the joke about the guy who got the job as the chief lifeguard in a big swimming pool in Dublin? He couldn't swim, but he could speak Irish.
Very good. Very good.
But that was the sort of thing back then. It was sort of you got into places because there was a lot. The Irish lobby had a lot of political power, and it was a very small lobby.
Yeah. I noticed that with the names. Still when you see the credits going up on some program made by RT, quite a few people have their names in Irish. But I think that is. I'm sure there are those who did that so they could make progress in their careers. But and I know people who knew. Sean O'Riordan when he was only John Reedy back in the day. But at the same time, maybe there are people who feel, in a way, it's reclaiming. It's like Muhammad Ali. He says, don't be calling me by my slave name. I'm not Cassius Clay. I'm Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that. I think actually, I meet a lot of people now who years ago wouldn't, who deliberately wouldn't have spoke Irish to you, who would now, as you say, use a couple of focal. But I think it's authentic now. I don't think it was sort of, sort of ephemeral or something, just using it for the sake of some sort of gain.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's good. I'm glad to hear you say that. Now that gives me heart, because I do think that the Irish language it's a tragedy. It really is a tragedy that the way it was taught or the way we learned it or didn't learn it.
Well, there was a lot of story about it too.
Oh dear, it's such a beautiful, beautiful thing. I heard Marty Morrissey on RTE this morning in the radio.
This morning, yeah.
And he was talking about it and using a couple of focal. I have to keep explaining that's a couple of words, not a couple of focal. It's he was stressing this ability to at least say a few words. Final point, Pat. Do you think is it St. Patrick? We celebrate St. Patrick's Day, and you have all these marches, and we watch the TV and see the summarizing of all that happened during the day, and people go over to Washington, and the bowl of shamrocks is presented, and so on. And people, I think, genuinely take pride in being Irish, and they say things like, there's two groups of people on St. Patrick's Day, those who are Irish and those who want to be Irish. Is it a boost to our genuine pride in our country? Or is it a kind of a cop-out where we say, oh, I'm patriotic, I'm Irish, I'm banging my chest, and then I'll push all that aside for the rest of the remaining 364 days?
No, Jude, I can only speak for myself, and it's basically anecdotal or what would you say, empirical experience. I think a lot of people. I'm very proud of being Irish, genuinely so, and it's not sort of pumping out your chest, ridiculous thing. Like, I think that's, first of all, this is well, I live in a beautiful place, and I think you do too. It's like, and the people are absolutely superb. And Jude, let's be clear: in the space of about 100 years, this place has gone from what would you say, bucolic pastoral, or fishing and farming, to what one of the top most wealthy nations in the world. Now, that doesn't mean to say that I'm blind or myopic to what's going on for a lot of other people, but a lot of the things have changed. And I think as a nation, well, sorry, I'll rephrase that, a state, because you're going to say it's not a nation yet. but, but
I'm
no,
glad to
I think,
see I have got inside your head, Pat.
but yeah, but I've been in America and I've been in Australia, and I'm telling you this: when people find out you're Irish, a lot of doors open, and a lot of, like, I've been stopped. Oh, good morning. It's lovely to talk to you. And there's very, very few people have anything against the Irish, and it's the old thing. You see, I remember we arrived in Australia way back about 30 years ago, and we presented our passports, at the immigration desk. And I don't think the guy even looked at the passports. All he wanted to do was chat to us. Now, Jude, I'm told that the attitude towards the British was very, very different. So I don't. I'm just saying. No, I think most people are very proud to be Irish, and I think it's. Jude, when you look at and this is a sort of more serious point. When you see how many people in our history have been willing to die for it and so on, it's not a passing thing. It's very, very profound.
Yeah, yeah. Although, you'd have to, I think I would be a wee bit less rosy about it. I think certainly what you say is true. Every word's true. But I think a lot of people, they go for the plastic shamrock, essentially. And they may not wear a plastic
Yeah,
shamrock, but there's Paddy's Day and Asher, I'm
exactly.
great and all. And then that's the end of it. I won't sort of vote, maybe, or I'll not bother thinking about politics, or I'll not be concerned about the North, or I'll not be concerned about homelessness. There's things that
Yeah.
somehow, if you really love your country, you'd want your country to be better, wouldn't you?
Aye, but Jude, I think that with respect, you're going to find them in every country, but they're the sort of mindless minority, and
Or do you think
you're
you're a
never.
minority, Pat? Do you think you're a minority?
Jude, I've no doubt about it. They're a minority.
But we let
Every
those
time.
things happen, Pat. We let it go on and on.
Yeah,
Homelessness.
but Jude, but politics, politics. We've got a lot of politicians across the world. How did Trump get elected? A lot of people can get fooled that people are going to deliver. How did Boris Johnson get elected? And there's all sorts of populism out there. The easy solutions. And I have heard people now about our health. We spend a fortune on health, yet our
Yeah.
queues are mile long. Our education system's creaking at the and so on. Yet there's a whole lot of other things that we're doing well. So yeah, there has to be a wee bit of balance,
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm sort of in the back of my head. I don't want to say everything's rosy in the garden, because it's not.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's a reasonable assessment, I think. But
Yeah.
right, by the way, did you hear about Leo Varadkar's boo-boo last night?
Brilliant. Go ahead. I'll let you spin this one.
Well, he referred to his time as he spent as an intern in Washington, the year 2000, I think. He took time out from his medical studies, and he told an event in Washington last night that he had worked in Congress during the last year of the Clinton presidency, when, quotation, when parents might have a cause for concern about what happened to interns in the city.
Yeah.
I mean, that was an obvious reference to Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky.
Yeah.
It was a strange blunder for a man who must be, I would have said he was a pretty savvy guy, and he would see pitfalls. He really seems to have jumped into that one with both feet.
No, Leo has a fairly wide track record of putting his. Remember, he went into Dáil and said about someone about Gareth Fitzgerald writing boring articles for the Irish Times. And by the way, he was 100% right, because they were seriously boring. They were so intellectual, But anyway,
Yeah.
he sort of had to apologise for that, because that was the former leader and the sort
Mm.
of the saint-like Gareth.
Blessed
And so
Garrett. Yeah.
blessed Garrett, he on high. And he said had a couple of other things as well. So, Jude, here's the thing. He should have been very, very aware. He had been at a dinner or something with Hillary Clinton earlier on. Hillary Clinton is coming over to Belfast next month. Apparently, Bill's coming with her as well. The Clintons are front and centre nearly of everything to do in Washington today for Ireland. Well, anyway, they're very much involved. And for the Taoiseach to come out with that sort of remark, You know, it's now. By the way, he's apologized for it. He said it was a no judge joke and so on. But Jesus, when you're Tisha, and even look down the audience before you make a joke like that.
Yeah, that's true. Although, Pat, coincidentally, over the last couple of days, I watched a video on YouTube. It was Bernie Saunders with Frankie Boyle, actually, somewhere in Britain, and a big crowd of people. And he talked for about an hour and 20 minutes. And he talked about politics, in the States and the politics in Britain. And one of the things he said, and we've heard this before, but somehow the way he said it, it hit home for me. He says, for most people, politics is entertainment.
Yeah.
And he says, if I say something stupid in the course of this talk, almost certainly it'll be clipped out and it'll be spun out and all around the place. So it's entertainment. Or we're going to elect a president. Would I like to have a beer with him? And he says the politics should be about people's lives. How are their lives lived in terms of having enough money to put food on the table? How are they living their lives? Have they got a table? Have they got a house? How are they treated when they're ill? Are they looked after? Are their human rights protected there? Or do you have to be rich in order to get medical attention? Jobs, getting jobs, poorly paid jobs, unequal jobs. The fact that when he was young, he said, the CEO of the average company got a salary around 40 times as big as the average worker. Now he says, and this was recorded last month, now he says in the States, the average CEO of big companies is making 400 times as much as the average worker. So somehow when he said that, I rang a bell in my head, because I'm totally guilty of going after the small things. I mean, it's far more interesting to talk about Leo making a boo-boo than it is to talk about what's Leo's policy on homeless people in Dublin. I must say, I ended up admiring Saunders enormously as a result for getting us to... Actually, it's about grown-up politics rather than the likes of Boris Johnson's politics. What do you think?
Yeah, but Jude, here's the thing. Sometimes the serious... Jeremy Corbyn, to use him as an example, has been on the right side of history in just about everything he said during his career, including Iraq. But that's never mentioned. And his portrayal in a certain way as sort of politics, you sort of go, the serious politicians are not taken seriously, yet the buffoons are. Jude, you're the man that said some time back that you would have enjoyed Boris Johnson, that he had been a great personality, walked into a room, lit the place up, and so on. And like I would have been the same. He's that sort of personality, but he's about as profound as a rain pool out there. It's all so the man, Jude, I don't think he has any real policies. He'll shift whatever way the one's going to be a part of it. But it was all about his power position.
Yeah, but that's my point. That's the point Saunders was making. It's so much easier to deal with these people in terms of what sort of personality do they have, what sort of boo-boos did they make, do they dress nicely, would I like to have a beer, etc. And the really big important things, grown-up things, we're encouraged. In fact, to be honest, I'd be guilty as anybody of not focusing on the grown-up stuff. I could tell you what kind of suit Micheál Martin wears, but I mightn't be too good on his record in terms of, say, medicine. What has he said in terms of medicine, or what has he done?
Remember Diane Abbott, Jude? Remember, she was a Labour politician, and she was making serious points about a lot of things, about the treatment of women, about misogyny in politics, about racism and all the rest. But she was asked a question about some sort of statistic, and she got it totally wrong. She was absolutely dragged over the coals in the media, and about being a moron and all the rest of it. And it was so out of kilter, Jude. The fact that it's the same idea you're about Saunders. The mistake she made actually it sort of destroyed her in a way. because she was held up to such ridicule. And I don't remember exactly, some statistic about maybe bank borrowing or some bloody thing. But anyway, the bottom line of it all was the sort of the minor stuff became the big stuff, and the serious stuff got lost.
Yeah, yeah. Mind you, that thing about racism, sexism, and misogyny and so on was raised by someone in the audience at the Saunders event. And he, when it came to the heels of the hunt, he said, yes, misogyny is really very, very dangerous. Racism, equally dangerous, homophobia, etc. But he says, don't mistake culture wars for politics. It's the big basic things we should be concentrating our fire on, finding ways of addressing, holding our politicians to account about those. Certainly the other things as well. But if you're talking about hierarchy, then things like health, education, a job, etc. One of the other things he said about jobs, incidentally, I don't know how you'd react to this, but I remember when I was in Newcastle upon Tyne for 2 years, and I did little stuff for the BBC radio there, and they were a really nice group of people. And one of the guys was a working class guy. He was their sort of resident socialist, young guy. And we used to go out drinking, and it was awful after the broadcast. But he said, at one stage, he said something about, oh yeah, that's good, we've got a bit of democracy. Now, if we could have some workplace democracy. And for the first time in my life, I thought about that. In workplaces are not democratic places. And Saunders addressed that too. He saw that as one of the human rights. He says it's just obscene that you should have one man working in a firm 400 times as wealthy as the man at the average person. But that idea of contributing to work, being allowed to share in the ideas as to how things should be run, that would transform many people's lives. And yet, in fact, the vast majority of people just drag their ass into work and hate it.
Yeah, I think there's an Irish guy, he's in charge of BP, and a lot of oil workers are very well paid. Yeah. But I was reading the last day that his salary is 170 times that of the average worker on BP. The average worker, so you work that out. So he's on something like 6 million a year.
Mm-hmm. And the last thing, and then we'll move on, is that he talked about having a stake in your work. And if I think of my own university experience, teaching the university or the Polytechnic as it was, when we would have a meeting where some decision was to come to, you would have the dean or somebody eminent as a chairperson. The trick was to find out what way did the dean think. And then when the meeting was on, you had got to you speak up in favor of that, because you knew at the end of the day, it was going to be what the dean wanted was going to be the thing that would stick. Isn't that sort of crazy? How do you talk about workers' alienation? You're a helpless. You're a cog. Okay, you get paid at the end of the month and so on, and doing the teaching's kind of fun, but there's something wrong. It kind of infantilizes us, or the average worker. That you just say, well, what does the boss say? Oh, okay. Please don't fire me. Please give me a raise next year.
But the power dynamics at work, Jude, you're talking about the dean or whatever. Like most people are again, you have so little power that the way you curry favor is staying on with the bosses. When I was in RT, I was told there was 2 ways to climb the greasy pole. One was to go drinking down on O'Donoghue's, or whatever the hell the pub was, and Donnybrook, and the second was to go play golf with the bosses. Like, I did neither, and I didn't stay too long. But not that some of the bosses were dead decent people and all that. But in most situations, if you want to get on, you stay on the right side of the boss. That's a fact. Yeah, it's
appalling. I mean, it really is something. I'd be very interested to hear other people's views on that. And it's such an idea of democracy that doesn't cross the mind of vast majority of people. Okay, let's move on to a more serious matter. You sent me this one about Israel and the European Union policy, foreign policy. What was it? They had a visitor? Was that it?
No, it was Israelis last week. I read it in the Jerusalem Post, Israeli government officials said they would not be inviting Joseph Borrell, the chief of the EU's foreign policy, to Israel because last week he condemned the killings of both Israeli IDF by IDF and Palestinian killings. And the Israelis have taken offense that he equated one set of killings with the other. In other words, the suggestion seems to be when the Israeli Defense Forces killed somebody, they're the good guys, and when Palestinians kill them, they're the bad guys. And I thought, the arrogance of that, talk about a hierarchy of death. You sort of, the Israelis have gone to the stage. They really piss me off big time because the arrogance is overwhelming. They're basically saying when the IDF shoot dead somebody, that they have done it because for the right reasons and they're sort of totally blameless. And when the Palestinians, they're the terrorists, and so don't equate when the Israeli kills somebody and when the Palestinians. And I'm going, good merciful Jesus, work that out for me.
Yeah. I know, Pat, you shouldn't be surprised because you have to, having come through the years, the troubles here, wasn't it exactly the same policy? I mean, there are people who still would say that the people who did the killing was the IRA or the INLA. The people who simply tried to get things back to normality was the security forces, in quotation marks, and the government and so on. And even loyalist paramilitaries. So it's the same situation, really. It's, identify the bad guys, these people as the bad guys, and of course you're going to condemn them, but how dare you criticize our forces? It really is a shocking thing. Might is right. There's no two ways about it. Might is right as far as these people are concerned.
Yeah, but the thing about it, this guy has gone that the government, the Israeli government will not be. There will be no official. And if he comes as privately. He won't be allowed. He won't be accorded any sort of state visit. So they're basically saying, we're trying to punish you for pointing something out. And the Israeli government has moved so far to the right that it's almost become fascist. And yet, who's calling them out? The Americans won't call them out. And even they're like Borrell is sort of his one is sort of basically saying, look, there's two. And by the way, Jude, there have been a lot of killings by the IDF. This last, I think it was 23 Palestinians shot dead in the first month of this year in January. But that's a lot of, and like, geez, Jude, if there's 23 people shot dead in Northern Ireland or in Britain by the British Army in 1 month, I think a lot of people would be asking questions. And like they're carrying out raids on refugee camps and so on, and they're saying this is to prevent terrorism. I think it's meant basically as punitive.
I was just thinking as you're talking there, Pat, I agree with every single thing you've said about certainly Israel and the Israeli security forces, quotation marks, because it's so similar to our own situation here. But is there anything, I mean, okay, you and I can talk about it, but are we not doing the old politics as entertainment thing? There's nothing we can do about it, or is there?
No. Yeah, well, you can do, you can highlight it. Jude, I think this sort of thing that the Israelis are, Jude, the day the American embassy moved from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, the IDF, I think, shot more than 50 Palestinians. And injured, I think, a couple of hundred, by live bullets, not, sort of explosion. They actually shot them. And it got next to no publicity in America. Nothing. The Americans are sort of just saying they're our allies, they can do it. And if we all turn a blind eye, Jude, one of the things why I think I take it so seriously, just like you're after saying, I came into Derry as quite a young man. Like I knew, of course, I knew what was going on, but not to the extent. And then I realized the British Army and the RUC, they had press officers every which way. And the Derry office of the RUC, there was about 4 or 5 press officers. And the narrative was almost, a man has been shot dead, and they would give all the details. Well, the reporters just took exactly what the RUC press office had handed out and the British Army had handed out. And, as you said earlier on, the paradigm was the Catholics or the nationalists were the mad rebels. The Protestants or Unionists were the bigoted whatever. And the good guys were the security forces in the middle. That paradigm was a load of bollocks, dude. 50 years of misrule and bigotry and sectarianism. I'm not saying you either support or didn't support violence, but it's like a valve gets released somewhere.
Yeah.
And you can go on about a police force that was 93%, 94% Protestant and Unionist to be specialist. No one put in context what was going on in the background.
Yeah.
And of course, I think it was Jonathan Dimbleby that said, once our boys came into the conflict, namely the British Army, though their portage went out the window, it was our boys. Remember Thatcher hated the fact that even the BBC or ITV would even sort of attempt to contextualize what was going on there.
Yeah.
So and remember, I'll stop now. But remember, her he swung to what do you call it, Widgery. Remember, we're not just fighting a war; we're fighting a propaganda war.
Yeah, they were very aware of that, and it was a propaganda war, or maybe a truth war, you could say. Okay, let's move from the past to the present. It's not just the likes of Micheál Martin or Leo Varadkar that's in Washington today. It's unionists as well. Jeffrey Donaldson's there. And Jeffrey has made a statement. I'll just read it very quickly and you can tell me what you think. We'll spend 3 minutes on it because there's a last one I want to go to. Jeffrey says, I think it's important that we work our way through through the legislation, the legal text, so that we understand fully the details of what this framework actually means in practice for businesses trading within the United Kingdom or trading with the European Union.
Yeah.
How do you think Jeffrey's been received? Would it be politely, or did they lean over to try to seem, non-partisan in America? Or?
Chuck Schumer, Jeffrey responded after Chuck Schumer's speech. Apparently, Jeffrey said he'd need to read some history books. So I take it that suggests he's not getting it all his own way. He was trying to say that that he had been politely received and so on. Jude, the Americans.
What's the thing about Chuck Schumer?
Chuck Schumer. He's the majority leader, isn't he? The Democrats. He's a major player, and he said it's about. He said to and some sort of function he was at when Jeffrey was there. He said the people of Northern Ireland deserve sort of government, and it's time. Everybody, Sinn Féin and the DUP got back into government to do the business of the people, and that is to put back self-government. And I think he said some other things like that's what politicians should do. And Jeffrey apparently said afterwards, I read it in Sky News' blog somewhere, that he would need to read a few history books or something. But
Jeffrey said somebody needed to read a few history books.
Yeah, exactly. Here's the thing, Jude. The Americans put in a lot of effort. 25 years. It's one of their great Good Friday, and it's used as a template for other conflict resolutions as well. The Americans are deadly serious. They've invested seriously in Ireland and foreign direct investment. They see Ireland as nearly their base in Europe. And I'll finish up. Next week, isn't there? There's legislation going through Westminster about the what do you call it, storm and break. And I think what's really happening, Jeffrey is looking for a way. He knows, Jude. He knows if they turn this down. Has anyone that you're aware of laid out a roadmap where unionism goes if they turn it down?
Yeah. I think he's quite aware of that himself. I think the Americans will be very polite to him. Americans are sort of famous for their politeness, but I also think they'll be pretty firm. I mean, he won't go away with any misguided notions about what they feel and what they think should happen. I would say that they may not have converted him, but they'll have pushed him towards the kind of decision making they want to happen as soon as possible. In other words, I wouldn't want to be in Jeffrey's shoes, even though he's probably getting a great feed when he goes over there.
Just one other thing is I forgot to mention. Schumer made it very clear and said it publicly. Well, let's get this on the record. He said that if there's no anything that undermines the Good Friday Agreement, he will be ensuring that there's no trade deal between the UK and the USA. So he's sending a message to Jeffrey. Anything that pisses off the Good Friday Agreement, we're out of here.
Yeah. And in fact, several of them have said that. Okay, we've just over a minute left, Pat. So give me a yes or a no. Ryan Tubridy, at the end of this season, is leaving The Late Late Show? Are you sad, glad, despondent, delighted?
I don't know what. I used to. I was one of the sort of the most regular watchers of the Late Late Show. I haven't watched it in about this last 3-4 weeks. There used to be.
Or
They
weeks,
used to
did you say? Yeah.
for weeks. Not. That's nearly since the new season started.
Okay.
You know, at one stage they had A-list guests. Now they have Z-list guests. People I have never heard of.
I have sort of I was going to say I have a fatal attraction to it, but in fact, I can't stand Ryan Tubridy. I really can't. But then I couldn't stick Gay Byrne either. I thought the two are cut of the same sort of cloth. I just think it's the same car, no matter what driver they put into it, it'll still be the same. Pat, give us a final thought for St. Patrick's Day. What are you going to do? Are you going to go out and have a special green-coloured drink or what?
No, Jude, we had the 6th grandchild yesterday.
Oh, yes, I forgot to congratulate you. Oh, well done, Hargis.
Yes, and so I'm going up to see him, and that's going to be my day today. St. Patrick's
Excellent,
Day.
excellent.
It's a lovely wee baby. It's £8 something.
So put a tricolour into his hand now, won't you?
I put a tricolour in his hand, and we can't call him Paddy.
Okay, Pat. See ya.
Hey, look,